Without any further ado, should we jump into the number ones? Okay, my number one. I don't know how to introduce this one. It's kind of a hard one to introduce. Not really. I mean, this is considered one of the best albums of all time. So it's a bit of a normie take. I think in Apple Top 100 that they released, do you remember recently out at Apple? Apple Music did their like Top 100, and they released this. They actually put this at number 3. So it is technically, objectively a very good album. But personally for me, this is Abbey Road.
Oh, yeah.
So Abbey Road is my favourite Beatles album. And I think I would never have considered it to be in my top albums until this year, really. Last year, before going to Liverpool, I did a proper listen through where I basically sat down and I listened to all of the Beatles albums in order of release, chronologically. All the shit songs, all the good songs. To kind of educate myself, to find new songs that I wasn't aware of, and find albums that I liked in their entirety. Abbey Road, not a single song on this album is a skip for me. It is the absolute peak of what the Beatles were capable of. And it is just phenomenally good. Every track on this has a different style and a different bit of inspiration. And they did that with the White Album. The White Album's brilliant as well, but I don't think the White Album quite has the same source as Abbey Road does. The White Album, effectively, for the Beatles, is the Beatles were very experimental, right? And they would do a lot of different styles, and they did with a lot of different things. And the White Album had basically one of everything. Every song in the White Album was completely different, and it was different, experimental, all that sort of thing. You have a 9-minute contemporary song where someone says number 9 for 9 minutes, and then you've got like some of the best written songs of all time. So that's that balance. But Abbey Road is almost like a tighter wrapped package than that. You have Come Together, which is a song that's been used numerous times, very well known. Something, which is a beautiful ballad. Maxwell's Silver Hammer, which is a fucking goofy Paul McCartney song about someone murdering someone with a hammer, and it's great. Oh Darling, again, a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful song, with some surprisingly strong like rock influences in there. Octopus's Garden, one of Ringo's best hits. The man can't sing, but he has some absolute bangers. Octopus's Garden is one of them. I Want You, She's So Heavy, again, phenomenal 7-minute track, goes on and is like the motif that runs throughout the rest of the album. Here Comes the Sun, very well known, one of the most famous Beatles songs. Not a personal favourite of mine, but it is objectively a good song. Because, kind of haunting, but really cool. I'm going through all of them, fuck it. And You Never Give Me Your Money is a gorgeous part of the soundtrack as well. And this is where we start to go into the second half of the album. And in the second half of the album, we get that seamless run. And that is where it sort of tickles my fancy. Side 1 is all individual but brilliant tracks. Side 2 is a seamless run, which tells various little stories, but is just, again, like the peak of contemporary music. Modern contemporary music for me. Yeah, okay, it's not modern, it's from the 60s. But for me, like, this is what I'm saying. Like, in terms of music history, it's at the top for me. And it's not everyone's cup of tea. I'm sure people would like praise individual Beatles songs, but not this run. For me, this run from Sun King, Mean Mr. Mustard, Polythene Pam, She Came In Through the Bathroom Window, Golden Slumbers, Carry That Weight, and The End is a phenomenal run of small songs which blend into each other, and they clearly recorded in one set. It is designed to be listened to through and through, or on vinyl. It's intended that way, similar to Dark Side of the Moon. It's an absolutely phenomenal album, and I cannot gush about it enough. And the more I listen to it, the more I love it. And it's one of those ones that never, ever gets old. If I'm ever stuck of what music to put on, I'll just stick on Abbey Road, and I'll listen to it through and through. I might put on my Beatles playlist sometimes and shuffle it, but it's never as good as getting this many good songs in one album. I mean, it's actually incredible that they managed it. I mean, the Beatles are phenomenal, right? They are one of the most famous bands in the world for a reason. They released albums that have basically banger after banger after banger after banger, and that is a very rare thing to find. But Abbey Road is absolutely one of them, and I am not surprised that Apple Music put it as their third best album of all time.
What was 2 and 1, do you know?
2 and 1, Thriller by Michael Jackson was 2, and The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill was number 1. I'm not as familiar with that one. But yeah,
I've not listened to Abbey Road all the way through, which I think's Beatles as well. Like Beatles, I actually haven't listened to that. Like I've never gone like Queen. I did was like my band that I went back and listened to a lot of their albums and stuff. I've never ever done it with the Beatles. Obviously, I know
for
like
me,
the famous ones.
For me, like I never rated the Beatles that much as a kid. My granddad loves the Beatles, but loves their earlier
My sister
work.
does. Absolutely.
And I love but I think you've got to love different eras. And I think the interesting thing about this is a lot of people like early Beatles, and that's all I knew, and that's all a lot of people know. But early Beatles is very 60s, kind of like, I'm in love with you, here's 20 songs about being in love with you, wanting to kiss you, wanting to hold your hand, saying slightly suggestive things that probably wouldn't be allowed nowadays, but were acceptable in the 60s. And then they get smacked off their tits and do loads of really trippy albums, and then it gets very, like, more like rock influence, but more just kind of ballads and heavy, just... But so that's why I think, for me, the end of their career as the Beatles is some of their best work. I think Let It Be, I think the White Album, I think Let It Be, and I think Abbey Road are 3 really phenomenal albums. But if I had to pick a favourite, it would be Abbey Road. Probably closely followed by Let It Be. Just because for me, that's the era of the Beatles that I just resonate with completely. I'd never known about that era before, and when I discovered it, after only assuming what I thought about the Beatles was just what they are, after discovering this, I was like, oh, okay, they are genuinely, like, the best band of all time for me. I adore it. And it's, fuck it, it's a normie take, but it's a brilliant album.